Welcome to Pictish Shorts, our new podcast from the Pictish Art Society. We're going to use these short episodes to introduce you to some of the people who run our society and also to other people in the Pictish universe, so academics, artists, archaeologists and craftspeople. And we're going to ask them the same questions to dig a little bit deeper into their Pictish interests. And our first guest today is Pictish Art Society stalwart Fiona Campbell-Howes. Welcome to our first Pictish Short, Fiona. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
David, for inviting me. So on the Pictish Art Society Committee, I am the lecture coordinator. So I am responsible for sourcing speakers for our 6 lectures that we give a year, and also for our annual conference every October.
And a great job you do too. So first question is, what first got you interested in the Picts?
So this is going back to the 1970s. So when I was very young, I lived in Nairnshire, in the northeast of Scotland. And we lived in a tiny village, a little row of houses below an Iron Age hill fort. And one day my dad took me up to this hill fort and he showed me this piece of vitrified stone. I mean, there was quite a bit of vitrified stone lying around. And he told me that, this was from the fort burning hundreds or thousands of years ago. And it was just fascinating to me that people had lived on this very spot where I was living so far back in the past. We moved to Murray when I was about 10. To Kinloss, which is just outside Forres. And again, my dad showed me as we were driving there for the first time, Sweno Stone, which is an incredible 6-metre tall Pictish monument on the outskirts of Forres there. And it's covered up now. It's in a glass box now, but then it was just standing alone in its field, and it was just an extraordinary monument to see. And then the final thing I think that got me into the Picts was this book, which is the Murray book, which was published in 1976. And my parents had that, and I had a look in it. And there's a chapter by Alan Small on Iron Age and Pictish Murray, and that just got me totally into the archaeology and the sculpture that was around me in Murray.
It's funny how some of our experiences are commonplace. For me, it was Finhaven Hill and lumps of vitrified rock and wells and things, and just being shown some of the ordinariness of life long ago.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, next question. What do you find most fascinating about the Picts now?
So here I need to explain that despite having had this sort of long-standing interest, I didn't do anything with my interest in the Picts until I was 50. So I turned 50 during the pandemic, and I thought, no, what I really want to... I've been working in the tech industry. And I thought, no, what I really want to do is go back and do something about the Picts, because I was really interested. So I signed up to do a master's at University of Birmingham, in medieval studies. So I did that first, and then I've moved straight on to doing a PhD at the University of Glasgow. Just amazing supervisors. I've got Professor Catherine Forsyth and Professor Thomas Clancy as my supervisors, and I'm looking at the early medieval Murray Firthland, so sort of within a radius of Inverness. And so what I find really fascinating now is that in 2006, Alex Wolff argued that the sort of premier kingdom of Pictland, Fortriu, was based in this region around the Murray Firth, where I'd grown up. And what got me about that was it is completely missing from the historical sources. You have a massive promontory fort at Burghead. You have a major monastery at Port Mahomet. You've got a very big monastery, it seems, at Kinedda. None of these places are named in any historical source. So I was just really fascinated to think maybe I can find some reference to these in the historical sources, or maybe I can put together the history of the region from other sources like sculpture, place names, archaeology, landscape. So that's what I find fascinating now.
Pictish studies has moved on so much recently, but there are just these enormous gaps still, aren't there?
Yeah, just incredible. But the work that, for example, Gordon Noble and his team are doing at Burghead is just bringing so much about that fort to life. So much is coming out of that site. It's just incredible.
Wonderful. Okay, question 3. What's your favourite stone or Pictish artefact?
So I know I had a hand in creating these questions. This is really difficult. So of all of the stones or artefacts, what's my favourite? I'm going to say Sweno Stone, and I'm going to show my little Sweno Stone that was made for me by Alice Siccarti at Archaeoptics. It's not, and people look at that stone and go, oh, it's beautiful, but it's really quite sinister. Or it's certainly very kind of gory and violent. There's these battle scenes on the. It's a huge cross. I mean, it's six meters tall. There's a huge cross on one side, but there's a series of battle scenes on the other side. There's decapitated heads everywhere. So it's quite a gory monument and quite forbidding. But it has stood in that same spot just outside Forres since it was put up, probably in the late 9th century. And it's just incredible to go to visit it and think that this has been here that entire time. It's an extraordinary monument.
I think it's a worthy choice, absolutely. Okay, question 4. If someone could only visit one site or museum, which one and why?
So I think the obvious answer to this would be the National Museum of Scotland, just because if you're only going to visit one place, you've got so many Pictish artefacts and monuments in there. So that for definite. But I personally would say, and I've got to thank Victoria Whitworth, the art historian, for putting me on to this. There is a cross slab at Old Editon Church up in Easter Ross, near Tyne. And this cross slab is quite simple compared to other Pictish cross slabs. So it's basically a small cross, and underneath it is this sort of mound shape. And within this mound, there is this like lone rider figure. And it is a man, he's riding a horse. But the thing about it is it's almost in full relief. It's much more relief carved than a lot of, than a lot of picture sculpture is. It's almost 3/4 relief. And Victoria said, if you go and lie under this monument and look up, then you will see the face of this Pictish, probably a king, Pictish king looking out at you. And so I went earlier this year, I went up there in May, and it was a beautiful day. And I was there alone in the churchyard, and I lay down, and it's just incredible. You see this face staring back at you that has been there staring out for probably 1,200 years. So I would say that is an experience.
It is a stunning stone, and I've done the same, and with Victoria as well. And I'm firmly of the belief that the two figures below are unfinished. I think it's an unfinished stone. I think that line, I think it's an additional leg is just the artist working out what he's doing with it, and it's still to be carved in the relief, similar to the single rider. But
it's interesting. Yes, you do have the two incised figures underneath.
Yeah, I think it's an unfinished stone. But, anyway, on to the last question, which was my question, which is, which lost stone or fragment would you most like to find? And before you answer, the reason for the question is that it does seem to be part of the Pictish tradition to remove the one piece of any stone that would tell you what's going on, so that you can't quite work it out. So anyway, off you go. The lost stone or fragment you'd most like to find.
This is a great question, though, so thank you for this one. So there is one, and I'd like to thank Daniel McLean for putting me onto this, because I wasn't aware of it. It was recorded in the kirkyard of Convinthal Church in Inverness, which is sort of, as you go down from the Aire towards Glen Urquhart, it's sort of halfway down that road. And it is mentioned in a Proceedings of the Society of Antiquities of Scotland article from 1911, and it's a rider, again, it's a lone rider, like the one I was talking about at Editon. And so you can't really tell how old it is, or whether it's a sort of kingly armed rider, or whether it's a cleric. You can kind of tell that it might be Pictish, or at least that era, because you can see that the figure doesn't have stirrups, so that he's got his legs quite far forward and he's leaning backwards, so he's riding the horse without stirrups, possibly without a saddle. So it does seem to be maybe early medieval. And it's very interesting because otherwise in Inverness there are no really figural sculptures. So one area that I'm looking at is sort of around Rosemarkie. There's no figural sculpture really there at Rosemarkie. There is the Class 2 slab at Logie Wester, the Conan stone, but that has kind of mythological figures on it rather than like real people. And so this one, if it could be found, this might be like a figural sculpture of a real person, which is otherwise missing from that part of Scotland.
Wow, that's a good one. I need to look that up. Well, thanks, Fiona. That was broad, and there's so much common ground in Pictish interest that I think your academic approach is a breath of fresh air, and particularly your open-minded approach to things on social media. So enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for joining us on Pictish Shorts.
Thank you very much for having me.